Hey guys, it's Deb with thesocialbutterfly.ca. Thank you so much for tuning in with me today. I have a pattern review for you from one of my February makes. Today I'm going to be reviewing McCalls 7158, which is a dress pattern, but in keeping with my February theme, I turned it into a top, and so I thought I'd review it for you today. And I'm going to do things a little bit different with my reviews. This is only my 5th video, so I'm still learning as I go, but I think what I'm going to do today is follow a standard set of questions, and if that gets a really good response, then I'm just going to do all my reviews like that. So let's get on with it. We're going to be talking about the McCalls pattern 7158, and I'll just show it to you. So you can see here it is, and pretty basic dress. There is no zippers or button closures. It's just a pullover. It has the front and the back with your straps, and you can opt for a racer style back or just a squared off back. And yeah, that's it. And really the only, even slightly difficult element to this dress, I would say, is the bust starts. So there are some bust starts in this pattern, but otherwise, yeah, pretty basic. So first of all, before I start reviewing and going through my questions, I'm just going to stand up and show you the one that I have on, and then I will show you some of the other ones that I have made. This one that I am wearing, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll probably recognize this fabric because it's the same fabric that I used for my first Ultimate Shift dress. So I'll just stand back and show you. Let me just move this out of the way here. So here we go. It's a really nice fluid fabric. It's a rayon blend, and you can see, so here's the top here, and it's just a bit of a V-neck, and then I've got my straps, which I actually made a little bit thicker than the pattern called for. I just wanted enough to cover the bra strap because I don't have the option of not wearing a bra, so I want to make sure I can kind of cover those a little bit. It has the side darts right here. I'm not sure if you can see those. And what I did is I actually made the hemline in the back on this version a little bit longer, so that sometimes I like to just kind of tuck that into my pants and then wear a jacket and then just have kind of a little bit of the fabric peeking out in the back. So yeah, that's the way that it looks. And then let me just show you a couple of the other ones that I made. And I did not make these in February. I actually made these last year. So this is a pattern that's been kicking around in my stash for a while, and I just like it because it's fast. I can do a shirt in about an hour start to finish. So it's one of those patterns where, you're heading out, you've got a new blazer that you want to wear, but you want something to go underneath it that's really going to complement well. It's one of those types of patterns that you can just grab it out of your stash and quickly zip it up before you head out. So here is one that I made last year. It is a rayon blend. It's a light blue, and it has a pretty little white butterfly on it. And then again, I like the rayon blends because of the way that they just kind of fall over the body. So this is another rayon blend. This is a dark blue, and it has the little pink and white and mauve polka dots. I have this little orange one. I got really lazy with this one and just did ribbon straps. And you can see, if you look really closely, it has little hearts all over it. So that's really cute. And then I've got this pink one with the black and white polka dots. And I really like that one. I love pink. As you get to know me, you will know that pink is my favorite color. And then I have this little tanned colored one with bow ties on it. So that's really, really cute. And this gingham cotton one, which I ran out of fabric for. I think I had like 0.6 of a meter or something. So I ran out of fabric for the facings, so I had to just use white cotton that I had in my stash. But that's fine, it worked out really well. So this is a really nice summer one. I like wearing that in the summer with a pair of like white shorts or something. I have others as well, but I thought I would just show you some of them and not all, because you don't want to be here all day. Okay, so let's get on with the actual pattern review and the questions that I wrote down for myself to answer. So first of all, we'll start with the fabric requirements on the pattern. The pattern doesn't require a whole lot of fabric. If you are going to make the dress, I'll just hold this up for you again so you can see the line drawings. There is 3 different lengths. So if you're going to make the dress, it's going to be about 1.5 to 2 meters of fabric, depending on the length of dress you make. If you're making a top like this, then you can get away with less. Of course, I had as little as 0.6 of a meter, but it's roughly about a meter, so that you have enough for your straps and you have enough for your facings, and you're not going to worry about running out. So that is how much you require. And then as far as types of fabrics, this pattern here actually calls for linen, gauze, challis, crepe de chine. Am I saying that right? Challis, I think so. And I've made it mostly out of rayons, but I have done some cotton blends, some lighter cottons. You just don't want to use anything too stiff. So if you've got something that's fairly light, I did one that I actually didn't show you, and it was done out of a cotton lawn. And then I actually used another cotton lawn, just a solid cotton lawn, to line it with. And that turned out great for summer. It's really nice and light and comfortable, very cool. So you have lots of fabric options there. How are the instructions? So the instructions in this pattern are pretty basic, common commercial pattern instructions. If you are new to sewing and you've never seen instructions from a commercial pattern, because I know a lot of people now, when they first learn to sew, learn with indie patterns. And personally, I like indie patterns better, but let me just show you what the instructions look like. So they do have some nice illustrations, and they walk you through each step. The issue that I have with commercial pattern instructions is sometimes some of the techniques that they use. And I'll talk to you about that in just a second when we talk about the sizing that I picked and the alterations that I made. But there was a technique in this pattern that I didn't like, and so I chose to change that. And for me, I found that easier. As you know, in sewing, there are really no rules. You can do the same thing several different ways, and really it comes down to what's easiest for you and what gets the best results for you. So yeah, I'll talk about that change in just a moment, but the instructions otherwise are pretty basic, pretty straightforward, nice and easy, not too difficult. Let's talk sizing. So my measurements, just so you know, I am 5'2". I'm very short in the torso. Most of my length is in my legs. I have a 34.5-inch high bust, and I have a 37.5-inch full bust. And if you're new to sewing and you're not sure what I mean by high bust and full bust, please Google that, because that is very, very important when you're choosing your pattern size, to understand which of those numbers you should use. Typically, when I am sewing a woven fabric, if I'm sewing a pattern that requires a woven fabric, in other words, it's not knit or stretchy, I will usually go with my high bust measurement of 34.5. I will cut that size pattern, and then I'll do a full bust adjustment. Because this pattern is quite loose fitting, so you do slip it over the head. There's no zipper or anything like that. So it is quite loose fitting. I chose to cheat a tiny bit. Instead of cutting a size 12, which is what I would do, and then do a full bust adjustment, I instead chose to cut a 14 through the side, and then I graded to a 12 through the arm and the neck hole. And decided just to start there with my muslin to see how that worked. And it was okay. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't perfect, but it did fit around the body, no problem. I had no problem slipping it over my head and putting it on my body. But I did see a few things that were wrong with it, so I made some tweaks to the pattern. So I'll walk through some of the changes that I made. I changed the strap a little bit. I did make it a little bit thicker, and I'm going to talk about the straps again at the end of the alteration discussion and what I found with that. But the things that I had to do with this pattern after I cut it, because I cut it a 14 on the side, it was really winging out at the top of the side seam, so right under the arms. So I ended up actually having to nip it in a 1/2 inch. And now that I've done that, I actually like this. This for me is just good wearing ease now. It just feels comfortable. So a 1/2 inch was great. I just nipped that in. It just got rid of that wing that was going on. And I only took that in down to where the dart began. So I just graded it back to that 14 right where the bust was. That was the first thing that I did. The second thing I did when I noticed, or the second thing I noticed when I had made my fitting muslin, is that my darts were sitting above the bust. So they were way up here. And you want them to kind of point at the fullness of your bust. So I ended up having to drop the darts 1.25 inches. So that really made a big difference. And the other thing I noticed, and this is very not typical, when you have a larger bust, your dart point typically ends further back. So the larger your bust, the more farther back it will end, and that's to accommodate the space that you need. But what I was noticing was where the dart was ending, there was actually about an inch of fabric pooling in between the bust point and the dart. And no matter what I did, the only way I could get rid of it was to actually extend the dart leg. So I actually brought the dart leg closer to the bust point, and that seemed to take care of it. So I brought that closer by 6/8 of an inch. Now, had I cut a size 12 all the way through and did a little bit of a full bust adjustment, that wouldn't have happened. I'm certain about it. But I think because I cut the 14 through the sides and then graded to the 12 up here, that was just causing some funny things to go on with the dart. So I did extend the dart leg just a tiny bit. The other thing I do this with all my patterns because I'm so short in the torso, is I took out an inch in the space between the bust and the waist. So right here, I took an inch out of that. And you might think, why bother doing that? This is a really loose fitting pattern. It really wouldn't have made a difference, but it actually did make quite a difference. If you look at the pattern again, I'll just show you the line drawings. Even though it's subtle, it still dips in at the waist. So it still has a tiny little dip at the waist. And because it was sitting lower on my waist, it didn't look quite right. And what I was finding was I was getting a lot of fabric just sort of hitting my hips and stopping. So I was getting kind of this pooling going on. So I brought that pattern up by 1 inch. That helped significantly. So all the pooling went away except for right at the small of my back. And that is also an issue for me. I usually have to do a sway back adjustment. So I did have some pooling going on at the low back, and I just pinched out an inch, did a 1 inch wedge to do that sway back adjustment to get rid of that as well. And then what else did I do? I added the length for this one. So in the back, I added that longer seam so that I had the high-low hem thing going on. But that was just in this one. It sounds like I made a lot of changes, but really it wasn't that bad. So I made my fitting muslin. I made most of the changes at that point and then started sewing up all these copies that I have, all these good copies. And then I just kind of made little tweaks here and there to the length and stuff like that. Now let's go back to the strap. So there's a couple things that I want to say about the strap. First of all, the cutting. So anytime I have a pattern that requires a strap like this and it gives me a pattern piece, I don't bother using it. And the reason why is if you're making this fabric out of, if you're making this pattern out of anything shifty, like a chiffon or a rayon, when you pin a long skinny pattern piece to something like that that's very shifty and you pin it all down and cut it out, by the time you've got that cut out, it's not straight anymore. So I like to have my straps nice and straight and on grain. So what I'll do is I cut all my big pieces out first, and then I take the piece left over that I've saved for my straps, and I will put it down on my cutting mat, and I use my rotary cutter and a ruler, and I try to get a nice straight cut strap. So in order to help myself out, because I don't have a pattern piece for straps, what I always do is on my front pattern piece of my pattern, I will write down that I need to cut 2 straps, and in this case it says cut straps 2 inch by 11 inch and sew with 1/2 inch seams. So even though the rest of my pattern is 5/8 of an inch, I just conserved a little bit of fabric, made my straps the size I needed them so that when I sewed them 1/2 inch, they would be wide enough to cover my bra strap. So that I know works for me, and pretty much any pattern I have downstairs that has a strap, they're all cut the same size because I like that width. So that's what I do for my straps to get them cut out so they're nice. And then the second thing that I do when it comes to inserting the straps, I typically don't like to follow the method used in the commercial patterns. So in most commercial patterns, this one was actually a little bit different, but in most commercial patterns, what they'll have you do is take your strap, baste it onto the front of your shirt, then put your sew your facings on. And when you're sewing around the back of the facings, you leave an opening on both sides where you're going to later slide the strap down in between the outside of the shirt and the facing of the shirt or the dress or whatever. And there's a couple reasons I don't like to do that. One of the biggest ones is that usually that space that they have you leave open doesn't really line up in the back with my bra straps, and I kind of want the strap to go right over top of my bra straps to cover it. So that's the first problem. And the second problem is I find that when you're trying to slide your strap down in between the fabrics of the front and the facing, it's very finicky, and a lot of times it's just really hard to get them both the same length or lined up where you want them, and then getting in there and closing that up is just a bit of a pain in the behind. So I was doing a Berta dress a few years ago, and they had you do the straps similarly. What you would do is you'd still tack your straps down before you put your facings on in the front, and then you would put your facings on. Then you would try the shirt or the dress on and line up your straps in the back, so you could line it up wherever your bra strap was. So if you have a narrow back and your bra straps go like this, or if you have a broad back and your bra straps are more like this, you could line those straps up exactly over top of your bra straps, get them pinned. And so as I was lining them up, I would pin the strap behind the back of the fabric, so into the inside of the fabric, and get it all lined up. And I, once I felt like I had it, I would baste it, and then I'd try it on just to make triple sure. And then I would just simply sew it all right on like that. So I just sew right through all the layers of fabric. And instead of trying to wiggle it through the outside fabric and the facing fabric. So let me show you what I mean by that if you're not quite sure. I do have the blue shirt here that I did stitch in white thread, so you can see this very clearly, but then I'll show you what it looks like when you actually match your thread and your fabric together. So this is the front of the shirt, and as you can see, that strap goes right inside between the shirt and the facing. But if you look at the back, you can just actually see there that there's the strap. So I folded it over, I put it against, or put it on the back and pinned it until I had it exactly where I wanted it. And then once I had it exactly where I wanted it, I simply just stitched straight through that. I did 2 rows of stitching just to make sure that it's not going to come undone. And I'll just show this to you in the darker colors. So you can see here, this is the back, and I've matched my thread. That is really hard to see. So that's the method that I use. I find it works well, it's very quick, and nobody has ever called me out on it. So that is what I do, and I like that. That works for me, and so yeah, that's how I do that. So that's the discussion on the straps. Now, what would I rate this pattern? I would rate this as a confident beginner. It's really not difficult at all. The only thing is you may have some trouble with the bust darts. So if you've never done darts before, that's the only thing that I think could cause any issues. I would definitely, if you're a beginner and you want to make this top, start with a cotton. Start with like a lightweight cotton and do it out of that first, and then move on to something a little slinkier. But those bust darts, that's the only thing that might cause an issue for you. And a little tip for you, if you're new and you've not done bust darts, when you are sewing a dart looks like a triangle, right? So you bring the seams together and you sew from the seam line, so the side in this case, to the point of the dart. So you start from the seam line, from the side seam, and you sew to the point of the dart. When you get to the point of the dart, do not backstitch. So when you sew a seam, you backstitch at the beginning, you backstitch at the end. But when you do a dart, you don't backstitch at the point. What you do is just sew off of the dart. So just take a stitch off the dart, and then when you pull out your fabric from the machine, leave yourself a nice long tail of thread, and then tie that thread into a knot, and just bring that knot nice and close to the point, but not on the point. So you want to be a couple stitches away from the point, because if you kind of push it right up against the point, then that knot's going to create a little pucker or bubble on the right side of the fabric, and you don't want that. So I'll just tie a nice little tight knot really close to the dart point, and then snip the rest of those threads off. So that's my tip. That's how I do darts, and everybody has their own method. Yeah, I think a confident beginner could do this absolutely. I have a question here. Am I going to make this again? Well, obviously, yeah. So this is going to become a staple in my wardrobe. It already is a staple in my wardrobe. It's not something I'll get rid of just because it's so quick. So yeah, I will definitely make it again. And my conclusion, I just think it's a really nice, simple pattern. I'm really trying to steer away from commercial patterns just because indie patterns, I think, are much better. My experience so far is that indie patterns are way better drafted, and I like the support. I like the support that's out there for a lot of the indie patterns. There's some great Facebook groups, Pinterest boards, and of course Instagram, and a lot of people are happy to, you know, give their time away for free by putting up video tutorials on how to do their patterns and things like that. So I really am trying to support the indie patterns more and more, but I just happen to have this one in my stash, and because I was doing tops in February and I am needing work clothes, I thought, yeah, I'm just going to throw another one into the mix because I had this fabric left over from my dress, and what the heck. So that's it. That's my review. I hope that you liked the format of it. And if you did, give us a thumbs up. Please hit subscribe if you haven't already. I still have a lot of pattern reviews, and I apologize that it's been a while since I've put up a video. I've just had a really hard time getting the house to myself. It's been very hectic around here. But yeah, so I hope that you guys enjoyed that, and I will be back to you shortly with another review. And until then, have a great day, a great week, a great weekend. Bye.